cops have read it. What is the most "what the fuck happened here" moment you've experienced? One time, we got a call about a minor wreck in a highway corridor. We get there, I'm handling the accident. 100 yards down there is a car on flats. And another further down from that. Unrelated to the accident. One of the drivers walked back to us and told us a sketchy guy had been stopping at these cars to offer his help in fixing the flats. The theory was that he threw something on the road to flatten the tires so that he could help and get money from the drivers. I'm stuck at the back end of this mess, on the radio trying to get another unit to detain the shady guy. All of a sudden I look over and there's a guy in nothing but a hospital gown and an IV hanging out of his arm, just tootling along the shoulder. The nearest hospital was several miles away, so I have no idea how he covered that distance with nobody noticing. So here I am with 1. A car wreck, 2. A guy possibly flattening tires on purpose, and 3. An escaped hospital patient. All completely unrelated, on a major highway late at night. I was a cop on the res for a while and had my fair share of crazies. One night, I'm out driving around and I get a call from dispatch. There's a UFO out in one of the farmers' fields. Okay. So I get to the house and talk with the guy. We know each other, he doesn't seem to be that loony. I turn my spotlight onto said field and sure as shit, there's something not quite right there. It's metal and shit. So I go bebopping through the furrows and hoping my scardiness isn't showing, because this is freaky. It was an autumn night with the wind howling and clouds blowing overhead. I get closer. I have one hand on my holstered gun and the other shining my flashlight. I was rehearsing what I was going to say to our new overlords, and then my brain finally clicks as to what the fuck it actually was. A wad of those stupid Mylar balloons. All blown up and caught on some weeds. I'm talking like 20 of those fuckers, just chilling and scaring the shit out of me. I grabbed them and walked back out to the farmer. He started laughing and then I did too. I handed him over to him and got back in my squad, still shaking. The sad part was, he passes away a few years ago, and his family gave me those deflated balloons that he had kept. I have them in my basement now. This is my uncle's story, not a cop, but the call was sent to the fire department instead due to the strangeness. The truck was sent on a call for an unknown disturbance, which basically means anything in the world. They get sent an address and that's pretty much it. Truck drives down the street looking for this address and they get to the end and all they can see is an abandoned lot with nothing but bushes. Even though they can't see anyone, they have to get out and investigate, so my uncle and a couple of the guys get out of the truck and start walking around with the usual fire department call out. They didn't hear anything for a while and were about to pack it in as another pointless prank call when my uncle walked past a bush and heard rustling. He looks over and sees a man standing kind of awkwardly behind a bush. "Hey, Mr. Fireman. Did you call 911? Uncle, yes sir." My uncle steps a bit closer and realizes how man is buck-ass naked and standing at a strange angle. He motions to another firefighter that he found the caller and goes behind the bush to begin assessing. He is a firefighter, paramedic. That's when he realizes that the man has what he refers to, a fucking bunny tail, on his butt. Of course they try to get the man to explain why he had called in distress and what was going on. After a bit of avoidance, the man finally admits that he had taken a toilet brush cleaner and shoved the handle up his bum. Honestly, no idea why anyone would think this is a good idea generally. Being the enlightened individual that he is, he chose one with a hook on the end to hang up in a bathroom. What my uncle and the other firefighters assumed was that the hook had gotten stuck on something internally because they couldn't pull it out, and it caused the man significant discomfort when they tried. My uncle left the man with another firefighter, getting his information, and went back to the truck to call for an ambulance. Of course at this point he always mentions that he walked around the truck to see the rest of the company trying to silently die of laughter out of view of the bushes. When the ambulance arrives, my uncle meets them with a grin on his face and tells them to brace themselves before walking him over to the bushes. They assess the man and conclude that there is no way for them to remove the toilet brush in the field and that they have to admit him to the hospital for surgery. The only problem was that they couldn't figure out how to get to him into the gurney without causing him to move in a way that caused him more pain. They end up throwing a blanket over him and the firefighters help maneuver him into a sort of downward dog mountain position with his bum in the air to keep the toilet brush at the right angle. At that point my uncle decided that the fire department was done with the call and the paramedics could handle it from there and loaded up the company onto the truck. As they began to drive away, he says, they were loading this guy into the rig as we drove off and the last I saw of him was that blanket falling off and that damn bunny tail of his sticking straight up in the air. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. My uncle did follow up on this call with a friend at the hospital. The brush was removed surgically due to the hook getting stuck on something internally and causing the man to have some serious health complications. I found 3 kids one day running next to a busy highway. The oldest was 5. We finally got them identified and figured out they lived about a mile away. We got there. They were in the care of their adult, 20-ish, sister while their parents were on vacation for 2 weeks. The sister decided she'd rather pop Xanax and smoke weed than deal with the kids, so she locked them in their bedroom for about 10 days, occasionally sliding food and water past the door. There were piss stains on the baseboards in the bedroom from where the kids had decided those bathrooms should be. Finally the 5-year-old had enough and figured out how to unlock the bedroom window and make a break fit. That's nowhere near the darkest stuff I've seen. We don't like to talk about it. Might not really fit here as I'm not a cop, but still a WTF. As a brand newer nurse, we had 2 police officers drop off a naked man bleeding from his groin area. We were informed he was not in custody, but they would be in the waiting room to arrest him when he was discharged. The city would have had to pay for his care if he was under arrest. The man refused to say anything, without his lawyer, so all I knew was the chief complaint, cut on the balls. I take off the towel and get to see my first pea gland, as in without the normal fleshy covering. The way the skin was ripped, I thought for sure a police dog was involved. I'll spare you the rest of the gory details. Someone manages to get the backstory out of the cops. Dude was in the shower when they arrived to arrest him on a meth charge. He runs and tries to hop over a chain link fence. Not nearly as exciting as I was thinking. I used to be a cop. We got a call from a guy who claimed to be the victim of a robbery and was incapacitated in his home and had only just managed to reach his phone and call us. We arrived to a trailer home that was totally empty except for a man in hardcore fetish gear tied to some sort of sex swing. I mean, there was nothing else in this house except the gimp tied to the sex swing. Nothing, no furniture, not even curtains. Okay dude, what the fuck? Sex gimp? Well you see, officer, I hired 2 Asian hookers to spank me while I was in the swing. Nothing illegal there, no sexual acts, just some spanking and they'd leave. Well, the girls arrived, tied me to the swing. Then, 2 Asian guys showed up, beat the living shit out of me. Then pulled up a Heil trailer and stole literally everything that I owned before leaving me hanging here with my cell phone because they said they knew nobody would believe my story anyways, but the cops would probably chase them for a murder. I still don't know if I believe his story, but never found any evidence to suggest that he was lying either. I just didn't find anything at all. Show up to a trouble unknown call. Teenage-looking girl walks out the front door as I arrive, and sits on a chair in the front listening to an iPod. This was pretty disarming for me. She was clearly not distressed at all from whatever the trouble unknown was. I didn't even disturb her as I knocked on the front door. I can see an adult male through the side glass by the door. He has a look of absolute terror. As he reaches the door, a crazed-looking woman attacks him from behind, biting his shoulder like a zombie. I would later learn this is his wife. Holy shit. Dispatch, give me the channel and get me more officers here now. I open the door and the fight is on. Pull this woman off and wrestle her to the ground, face down. She's very small-framed, probably 5 feet and 100 pounds max. I'm a foot taller and 80 pounds heavier. She's screaming and flailing. I grab hold of her right arm, attempting to put it behind her back for handcuffing, but she is supernaturally strong for some reason. I've got both hands on her right wrist now, trying to control her, and she's not giving at all. I try pain compliance, muscle gouges, anything to give me an advantage. No response, still fighting. It felt like this was going on for a long time, but in reality it was a few minutes. Finally backup arrives, and he immediately goes to grab her left arm, seeing what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm finally able to get a handcuff on her wrist and pin it to her back, and my partner cuffs the other wrist, but she slips out, small frame, small hand, wrist. This happened a few times in a row, and finally out of frustration I yelled, "Just clamp the fucking cuff all the way down, we'll adjust it when she's under control." Finally get her cuffed, but she's still flailing and screaming. Other officers arrive at this point as well as paramedics. They're unable to assess her at all really. The husband tells us they bought some cheap weed from a sketchy dude in town, and after smoking it she flipped out. I assume it was laced with something. He said he smoked too but didn't have a reaction, so who knows. We had to drive this lady up to the hospital in a patrol car. She calmed down a little, but the entire ride she was rambling about nonsense. The hospital was prepared and had several large nurses waiting, and we got her strapped down to a bed. I told the staff about the weed and said, "Good luck." When my adrenaline was gone, my forearms were so sore, they felt like rocks from fighting with this tiny woman. Moral of the story: don't smoke shit you bought from the town crackhead. You're giving me flashbacks. One of the worst calls was almost exactly like this, except on a king-size waterbed that was almost exactly the size of the room it was in. It had to have been assembled in place, because there was only about 6 inches of space between it and the wall, so absolutely nowhere to gain leverage while wrestling with tiny psycho woman. It was absolutely frickin' ridiculous, squishing up and down on this goddamn bed while the unhinged zombie harpy tried to bite me and I tried to cuff her. Finally got her in cuffs, then just bodily picked up her 90 pounds and carried her spitting and clawing to the ambulance that had just arrived. It was like trying to stuff a catfight into the back of the ambulance. I'm pushing, the medics are pulling, and about the time I think we've got her in, she slips a cuff and clocks me right over the eye with the loose manacle. I saw stars and started bleeding, and about that time the cavalry finally showed up. 6 more cops and an engine crew from the fire department. Later we finally had her restrained on the stretcher. Then they called another ambulance for me. The family that had called on her being out of control was absolutely useless through the whole thing. Their only contribution was to keep screaming and hollering and ramping things up even more. Don't hurt her. Don't hurt her. Don't hurt her. I'm the one you need to worry about. Crazy bitch is trying to eat me. I'm taking a slightly different approach in answering this question. A couple of months ago, I got a QA, questionable activity call. It's a catch-all for anything suspicious. The caller stated she believed someone had snuck into her backyard, climbed up onto her second floor deck, and then left an imprint of their dick on her sliding door. I show up to the call about 5 minutes later and she's mad at me because I didn't schedule an appointment to come over and her kids saw me. She didn't want her kids to think something bad had happened. After we get past her anger towards me for showing up, she shows me the glass sliding door in question. In all fairness to the caller, there was a sizable smudge and imprint on the glass. However, the imprint looked nothing like any penis I've ever seen. In fact, the imprint looked really similar to the dead bird laying on the deck next to the door. When I pointed out the dead bird and explained my belief that no dick had been placed on her door, the caller became incredibly irate and told me she moved to our city because it was supposed to be very safe. But now she was thinking of moving away because naked people throwing dead birds at her house was more than she could handle. Realizing I would not be able to rationalize with Dick Bird, I left and wrote my report. Some people don't deserve to call 911. If you liked this, please like and/or subscribe, and if you think it's worth it, please share.